quick question. If you fell into the sea 500 million years ago, what would kill you first? Go ahead, take a guess. I promise you are going to get it completely wrong. Welcome to Ashborne ancestors. You think the shark is the oldest monster in the ocean. You are about 300 million years too late. Long before the first dinosaur ever took a single breath, the water was already full of nightmares. Giants wearing shells you would not recognize, mouths that made no sense, and one set of jaws so strange that the smartest people alive could not explain it for 100 years. These are the sea monsters that ruled the world before the dinosaurs ranked and explained. Some of them are the reason the shark looks tame. And the last creature on this list hid its greatest secret for over a century, until a machine finally saw straight through solid stone. Stay with me all the way to the end, because once you see it, you will never look at the ocean the same way again. Let us go all the way back to the beginning, more than 500 million years ago, to a world where the deadliest hunter alive was only about the length of your arm. Meet Anomalocaris. In its own time, this thing was a god. The ocean back then was full of tiny, soft, slow creatures, and almost none of them could fight back. Then this appeared. Two long spiked arms folded under its head, a round ring of hard plates for a mouth, and rows of fins running down each side of its body, like an eel wearing armor. It was the first true apex predator in the entire history of animals. The very first creature on Earth that made a living by hunting other animals. And it hunted with its eyes. Each eye held tens of thousands of tiny lenses. The same kind of eye a dragonfly wears today, giving it some of the sharpest vision in the whole ocean. In a world of blind, drifting things, Anomalocaris could actually watch you coming. But here is the strange part. For almost 100 years, nobody knew what it even was. When the first fossil turned up, it was just one of those spiked arms, lying there on its own. Scientists looked at it and decided it was the tail of a shrimp. Later, someone found the round mouth and called it a jellyfish. Then someone found the body and named it a sponge. 3 fossils. 3 different animals. 3 different names, sitting in 3 different museum drawers. It took until the 1980s for anyone to realize the truth. The shrimp, the jellyfish, and the sponge were all the same creature. For decades we had been holding the pieces of a single monster and slicing it into 3. That is the oldest apex predator we know of. And every killer that came after it only got bigger. Fast forward about 50 million years, into the Ordovician seas, and the arms race has already gone insane. Meet Cameroceras, the giant orthocone. The only close relative it has left alive today is the nautilus, a pretty little shell you could hold in one hand. Now stretch that shell to the length of a small bus, stand it upright in the black water, and cram a squid into the wide end. The largest shells may have reached around 6 meters long. For tens of millions of years, this was one of the biggest animals on the entire planet. Out of the open front of that cone came a crown of grasping tentacles and a hard beak. Many scientists think it did not chase at all. It simply hung there, silent and still, a shell taller than a person, waiting for something to swim too close. Think about that. You are a small fish in a black ocean. The last thing you ever see is a giant cone, gliding toward you, tentacles first. For a very very long time, this was the closest thing the sea had to a king. But the next hunter did not need a shell. It just needed a claw. Now we move into the Devonian, and we meet the largest bug that has ever existed on this planet. Meet Dunkleosteus, the giant sea scorpion. Its distant cousins are still with us. The quiet horseshoe crab that washes up on our beaches belongs to the same ancient family. But hundreds of millions of years ago, that family built a monster. And we know exactly how big, because of one single fossil. In a quarry in Germany, researchers pulled out a claw. Just the claw, nothing else. It measured about 46 centimeters long. Longer than your entire forearm. When they scaled up the rest of the body from that one piece, the answer was terrifying. This creature was around 2.5 meters long. That makes it the largest arthropod that has ever lived, bigger than any insect, any crab, any spider, before or since. Now build the rest of it in your mind. A flat armored body. A fan of paddles for swimming. 2 huge eyes on the front of its head. And those 2 spike claws, reaching out ahead to grab and drag prey back toward its mouth. And here is the detail that stays with you. Those claws were not smooth. They were lined with spikes, like teeth. So it did not simply grab its prey. It punched holes in it, and started tearing, while the animal was still alive and struggling. A 2.5-meter scorpion, with serrated claws and hunting eyes, gliding through the water. Would you survive one day in that ocean? Be honest in the comments. And yet, this thing was still not the top of the food chain. Because sharing those same waters was something with armor for a face. Meet Dunkleosteus. And this one comes with a warning. Almost everything you have ever seen about it may be wrong. For over 100 years, this fish was drawn as a giant, a huge shark-shaped killer, stretching up to 10 meters long, longer than a bus. That is the Dunkleosteus in every documentary, every museum, every poster. There was just one problem. We have almost never found its body. All we usually find is the head, sealed in thick plates of solid bone. Everything behind the neck was a guess. Then, in 2023, a scientist measured it a completely new way, using the one part we actually have. And the giant shrank. The typical adult was not 10 meters, it was only about 3.5. But here is the twist. That did not make it less frightening. It made it worse. Because Dunkleosteus was not long, it was thick. Short, deep, and heavy. Built more like a tuna crossed with a wrecking ball. A 3.5-meter Dunkleosteus. Weighed about the same as a great white shark. But it carried a mouth roughly twice the size. All that power, packed into a shorter, denser, angrier body. And the mouth is where the real horror lies. Dunkleosteus had no teeth at all. Instead, the front edges of its jaws were 2 long blades of bone. And every single time it snapped them shut, those blades scraped against each other, and sharpened themselves. It swam the Devonian Sea with a self-sharpening guillotine for a face. Scientists have modeled that bite. At the tip of the jaw, it could strike with thousands of newtons of force. More than enough to shear straight through bone and shell. And it could throw that mouth open in a fraction of a second, creating a burst of suction that yanked prey inside, before the prey even understood what was happening. It did not even spare its own kind. We have found Dunkleosteus fossils, marked with bite wounds that match other Dunkleosteus. In its world, everything that moved was food. including its own reflection. We are almost at the top of this list. But the final creature is the strangest of them all. And for 100 years, nobody on Earth could figure out how it actually worked. Meet Helicoprion, the buzzsaw shark. This one lived at the very end of our story, in the Permian, around 270 million years ago. And it left behind one of the most baffling fossils ever discovered. A perfect spiral of teeth, curling round and round on itself like the blade of a circular saw, with well over 100 teeth locked into the coil. Here is the problem. Teeth do not grow in a spiral. So for more than a century, no one could agree where on the animal this thing even belonged. Some scientists mounted it on the nose, like a strange fin. Some hung it off the tail. Some curled it out of the upper jaw like a bizarre trunk. Every reconstruction was a guess, and almost every guess looked absurd. The answer did not arrive until the year 2013. Researchers placed one of these fossils inside a CT scanner, a machine that can see through solid rock. And for the first time, they found the cartilage of the jaw still preserved around the spiral. The truth was stranger than any guess. The whorl of teeth sat down inside the lower jaw, running along the middle of the mouth like a saw blade fitted into a slot. When the jaw closed, that spiral rolled backward, slicing soft prey and dragging it straight down the throat. For an entire century, we held the teeth of this monster in our hands and had no idea how it ate. It took a machine that can look through stone to finally answer the question. And that same scan revealed one more twist. Helicoprion was not even a true shark. It was closer to the strange, ghostly fish we now call the ratfish, a quiet living cousin that still drifts through the deep today. So the most famous set of shark teeth in the entire fossil record did not belong to a shark at all. The biggest ones may have grown to 6 or 7 meters, dragging that living saw blade through the dark. That is the buzzsaw shark. And here is the final twist. It, along with almost every creature in this video, was about to be erased. Because around 251 million years ago, the ocean suffered the single worst catastrophe in the history of life. Scientists call it the Great Dying. Giant volcanoes poisoned the sky. The water lost its oxygen, and up to 96% of all species in the sea simply vanished. Almost every monster we have talked about was already gone, or was swept away in that collapse. The seas fell silent, and the world had to start over from almost nothing. And when life finally rebuilt the food chain, the new rulers that rose up were the reptiles. The dinosaurs, and the great sea reptiles that swam beside them, all came after this. After these creatures had already lived, and ruled, and died. Every shark you fear today is a newcomer compared to the monsters in this video. So the next time someone tells you the ocean is frightening now, remember this. The most terrifying things that ever swam were already ancient, before the first dinosaur was even born. And the sea kept their secrets buried for hundreds of millions of years. If you want to meet the monsters that came next, subscribe, because that is exactly where this series is going. And tell me in the comments, which of these 5 would you least want to meet in the dark? This has been Ashborne Ancestors. Before history was written, survival was the story.